Welcome, Christoph Esslinger, at our podcaster session. Please introduce yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you, Darren, for inviting me to the podcast. It's really a pleasure to be here. It was really a good pre-talk we just had about how this podcast came to be, and I think these podcasts, they fulfill a very important function, right, in terms of educating the larger community, and I think it's more important than ever with our whole field stepping out of the shadows with the advent of large language models to the public arena.
Yes.
So I think your educational purpose is more important than ever, and I'm really glad to be part of it. Myself, I'm one of the founders and managing directors of VUI.agency, and our main vision, the vision we follow, is what we call charismatic AI. So it's all about using new technologies, to create extraordinary customer experiences. It's in a nutshell what we do, and we can delve a little bit deeper into it maybe in the course of the podcast.
That was the idea, because my first question was actually about charismatic AI, because what we see, we know that it's hard to sell projects to boards of directors because of the cost. So how do you sell or explain charismatic AI? Because I don't know, it might cost extra to a board, and how you get them to say yes.
Yeah. So in the end, it's about making clear, for example, when we talk about customer service, that when you do customer service, you should see it as a privilege to serve your customers well, because, well, it's your customers that at the end pay all your bills. They pay your salary, right? So when we have the possibility to take care of them and to take care of them well, we should take that possibility. Especially when we are working in the field of customer service automation, right? Very often, as you just also hinted at, the first question is like, well, how much cost do we save, right? But that should not be the first question. The first question is, how do we create an even better experience for our customers? And if we save some costs along the way, well, that's a great byproduct, but that should not be the first product. And the value of creating an extraordinary customer service experience lies in the fact that people will spread the word around it. People will stay with your company. You will have much less churn. You will have customers that, as your fans, promote your company, which will significantly reduce the amount that you need to spend on marketing, because people will just talk about it. They'll say, wonderful experience. I had this recent experience with a friend of mine who talked to me about her health insurance. And she was just fascinated at how they do it. And she told me that story, because people like to tell stories, great stories, and stories that are about very bad experiences, but you want to avoid this bad experience. So she told me that, and I asked her, well, how many interactions do you have per year with that customer service? She said, maybe 1, 2. So one experience was enough to make her a promoter of the whole company.
And one bad experience, we know.
Exactly, will lead you away and will keep a lot of other people joining your company.
And did you do research on the difference in cost between a regular experience and an extraordinary or charismatic experience? So, you know what I mean?
Yeah, very good point. So, in the end, yes, there is an additional investment in creating an extraordinary experience, but this investment is worth it. Why? Because we just recently had an experience where we were approached by a company and said, okay, could you help us? Could you look at this current chatbot? We're about to launch it, and we looked at it and we said, we advise you not to launch it quite yet. Let's at least fix a few things first. And the problem was that they were promised basically by the technology provider. Well, this is going to be finished in a few weeks, and you will be able to launch it. And of course, they made that promise to their management, and now they're under a lot of pressure to deliver on that promise. So I think the additional investment to take a user-centric approach is actually in the beginning not even so much higher. It just means that you take a realistic approach to it, and you say like, well, instead of 3 weeks, I'm gonna give myself maybe a quarter to understand, at least on a basic level, the true needs of my users. I understand what they really want, and I give myself time to understand what are actually the capabilities of the technology, and I combine these to launch a first product that is enjoyable from the first step for the user. I'm actually a friend of a concept which is called, I think he called it in this article, SLIC model or something like that, SLC. So it's like it's a variant of the minimal viable product approach. It says you should create products that are small, lovable, and complete. So like you start small. You don't have to reign the whole world from the first instance, but what you should create should be complete, and you should make it lovable. It should be something that people enjoy using. So like focus on something that you can do well, do that in its entirety, and make it enjoyable.
And thus you fill in the brand. You do what actually the brand requires you to do.
Yeah, I think that's also a very, very good point. Involving the brand department early on, right? Because too often we encounter the situation that they're not being involved from the start, and of course when you start creating something that talks to your customers, it's huge implications on how your brand is being perceived. So I'm astonished sometimes at like the experience that you can find on like really premium brands websites, and in terms of the chatbots that are existing there. And I'm 100% sure that the brand department of these companies has never seen
or tested.
These chatbots, because they spend a lot of time defining, well, how do we write our websites, how we design our websites, even if even like human representatives of these companies, they're being trained in how to best represent that brand. Now you're creating a digital representative, a representative that talks or is able to talk to thousands, 100,000, millions of people at the same time, a highly scalable experience. Of course, you have to take very well care of how this experience is being perceived by your customers, right? This is what I like to call, if you don't do that well, as we said in the beginning, you will create frustration at scale. You have a scalable experience. People like to tell stories about extraordinarily bad and extraordinarily good experiences. You want to be on the side of the good experience.
And if you look at the board of companies, of the boards, how do you create a situation where they see this importance? I fully agree.
Yeah.
And actually, the chatbot or the conversational AI solution and the team is represented in the board, so they get the backing of the board to do whatever they have to do, but do it right.
Yeah. So we actually have a distinct advantage on that side, because when you talk about charisma, right? Charisma is especially interesting, of course, to higher management, because it was always seen as a desirable trait, especially for top leaders, right? So and to understand what you need to create charismatic AI, you first need to understand personal charisma. So what we offer is that we are also looking at top leadership training in terms of teaching them about personal charisma. And of course, this is highly valuable to them in their job, in their career. And from there, we can say, well, now you have learned about how you can be charismatic yourself. wouldn't you like your whole brand to emit that to the outside world? And we can help you do that with the help of technology. It's great that we will have your backing because you have understood the foundations of charisma.
That makes sense. And is the next step, would that be digital humans in terms of charisma and sending the brand message?
Well, I think we don't necessarily have to go in, for example, we don't necessarily have to go down the path of creating experiences that don't make clear that they are digital assistants, right? That mold too strongly into like the human experience. For example, I think for me it would always be very weird to when I go into a conversation with the I wouldn't go into such a conversation with the digital assistant, but I assume at some point it comes up, my grandma has recently died or something like that, right? And the assistant would go into trying to be very empathetic about that point and saying like, I'm so sorry to hear that. We don't believe that, right? Because we know that it doesn't have the capability to feel, right? So I think creating a charismatic AI experience is more about putting your partner, your conversational partner, at the center of your attention, right? And I can very well make clear that I am a robot, but I can still make sure that you are at the center of my attention, and I can take certain elements of human interaction and make it enjoyable to your experience. Right? So in my talk today, I said, well, we can actually hear a smile, and you can hear the smile also of an assistant voice that is talking to you, right? And in so far as we create these, or we use these enjoyable features of human to human interaction, and we make them available also to the digital sphere, I think that that makes sense because, well, we like to hear a nice voice, an agreeable voice, a voice that we like to listen to, right? That's what I would say about this one.
You published about the age of assistants,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd like to know more about that. Do we, in the near future, have our own digital assistant that does basically everything for us, our own personal AI?
So I think, to be honest, with the advent of ChatGPT, we actually see, I would say, we see a tendency that goes in that direction because people discover a lot of the potentials that they could use basically these assistants for, in terms of speeding up processes for them. Of course, there's a lot of people currently talking about, okay, well, if you want to create content, right, you can very well interact with these models, and you can get good input from them to speed up the process of also valuable content creation. You have to be careful about basically to verify the things that are coming back. So I would only recommend it actually to use it when you are yourself knowledgeable about a subject, but then you take it as basically as a help to move you forward, right? That can be, for example, one use case. And I do believe that because we see a lot of demand from companies, even from public administrations, and how can we use these best? How can we use it in our daily work to help us become more efficient in what we do? And I think this is one of the things. Again, we as the experts on that subject, as the people that have worked in that area for years and years, we can teach people about how can you actually use such a large language model in terms of, for certain aspects, really making it your own personal assistant, right? Tailoring it to your needs. Yeah, I do believe that's going to be a development. And I also believe, when we talk about charismatic AI, we basically need, a layer between the the technology at the back and the user at the at the front that makes sure the user is at the center of attention and also feels well. So for example, one trait of charismatic behavior is that you closely look at how your conversational partner is behaving and you adjust to that behavior. And I think technology will give us the possibilities to adjust our tone of voice, our way of speaking, our content, of course, to the exact needs and the fashion in which our conversational partner talks.
But that's basically like machine learning.
Yes, you can, for sure. You can. You will use machine learning to train that, right? And what you will want to do is that you can basically react in real time to the conversational behavior of your conversational partner.
What would your advice be to companies that have no chatbot right now and they have to start somewhere? What steps should they take from your experience to get from zero to being a hero?
Yeah. Start with the user, 100%. Customer service, look at what you're currently doing, look at what you're currently doing well, understand that, and then decide, okay, well, this is what I really do well. That's how I do it. And this is a part I believe a digital assistant could help me with. Because it's a standard question. I get it often. My human service agents, they're overwhelmed by always having to repeat the same question. So let me take that question, but let me understand what I do currently, so that when people ask this question, they go out of the interaction, they feel well about having their problem solved. Once that is clear, then, and you have that understanding, then you can start talking to potential technological partners and you can tell them, well, this is what I try to do. Show me how your platform will help me in reaching that experience.
So basically proper requirements.
Yeah, but start with the user. Don't start with the technology.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And as a last question, what would your advice be to all the companies that have chatbot platforms? Because we see a lot of the platforms around, and they all have their story. They're the best. They're special.
Mm-hmm.
What would your advice be looking at the market, what the customers actually need?
Yeah. So I had yesterday really a very good talk with some people from VUI who were sitting next to me at the table, and what they told me about their approach and how they are using their platform was, they said, we are the ones that learn from our customers. Our only job is to enable them to best use the knowledge they have, the advantage of knowledge they have, because they know their customers well, and to use it well. And I think that's the approach that I would recommend to any platform, right? And that's also why we immediately connected and we said, it might make a lot of sense to collaborate on that issue, because that's exactly usually our role, that we're stepping as a complement that basically builds the bridge between the platform on the one side and the customer and their customers on the other side.
Thank you very much, Christoph.
Thank you.